Hey everybody, I am so excited about these fabric baskets. They are so much fun. And it doesn't matter what size you make them, as long as you have 5 pieces, all the same size. Whoop, they want my glasses. So this one has embroidery on the panels. This is a prime example why I say if you're testing a lot of embroidery, use the same fabric as your test. When you're done, then you have these squares that can be done with something. This one is just fabric. So this is a 10-inch, this is an 8-inch, and of course we do a 6-inch, then they're going to nest. But this is done with panels. We had these wildlife panels in the store, and I'm like, what are we going to do with those? So I decided to turn them into these soft baskets. And I'm going to show you how fast and easy these go together. All right, all you need are 6 squares, rectangles, I guess, doesn't matter, all the same size. So these panels turned out to be 6.5 inches. Then I need 5 squares a 1/2 inch smaller. So these are 6 inches. And I need 5 squares of Bosal foam. So all my squares are 6.5 inches, sorry. My Bosal foam is a 1/2 inch smaller. So I have a 1/4 inch of fabric all the way on the outside. That's so the seams don't get bulky. So you need 5 outside pieces, 5 lining pieces, 5 pieces of, it could be Annie's foam, Bosal foam, somebody's foam, scraps of foam, whatever you have, a 1/2 inch smaller than your box. So it doesn't get caught a lot in the seam allowance. That makes it super easy. You're also going to need a strip of 2.5 inch strip. This is just straight grain for the binding. No big deal. We have lots of scraps for that. So you're going to take your lining pieces and you're going to just simply quilt them. Now, I don't care if you want something fancy. You put them in your embroidery machine. You make them all beautiful and stipply and happy. But I just took these and just put the Bosal in just with the X, just enough to hold them together. So I have 4 sides and a bottom, just like this. Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to sew these together in one continuous line without having to set in the bottom of your box. Okay, I've taken 4 of the squares and I've sewn them together just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Whatever seam allowance you choose, that's up to you, but I only left a 1/4 inch seam around my Bosal. So this is my lining. The easiest way to do the binding is to put it on now before we stitch the bottom in. So this is just 2.5 inches folded in half. It's straight grain. It's not biased, but if you have bias, that's fine. So I'm just going to do this again with a 1/4 inch. I'm just using the edge of my foot right now. And I have my AccuFeed foot on for my Janome, which I love because it makes everything feed so nice. All right, I have the binding on. Now I'm going to add the bottom. Now, traditionally, you would sew the box, set the bottom in, but I don't do it that way. I kind of, and again, this is a quick and easy project. So I'm going to start with my bottom square right along my end piece. Remember, I just got that edge of my seam allowance right there. Whatever your seam allowance is, mine's just the edge of my foot. You're going to stop. You're not going to sew all the way. You're just going to go to where your, what would be your seam allowance. You're going to pivot your box bottom. You're going to continue to sew. And again, I'm going to stop with what my seam allowance is. And of course, needle down. And I have an automatic presser foot that raises up. And again, I'm going to stop where my seam allowance is. And keep pivoting and turning my box. Sorry. And I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do the last seam. Now here I want to make sure my binding pieces are folded up, and you want to make sure that these match on the end. You don't want to have a kind of an offset seam. So take a second here and make sure you're matched up perfectly. don't think I am, but I can fix that. So what happens is now you have a perfectly sewn box. So you're going to do the outside exactly the same, except you're not going to have the lining. I mean, this binding piece, that just goes with the lining. So you're going to take your pretty squares and you're going to build the box identically the same way. And we're going to set one piece, set the lining inside my pretty pieces, and take the binding and fold it over. And I use my little clips for that. Oops. So now if you have like these have these little pictures of animals, if I would have thought about it, I probably would have made my binding a little bit shorter so it didn't cut off some of his ears. But fold your, and I know they're not ears, but I'll get that lecture later. Fold it over so you're nice and finished on the top. You see there's no kind of overlap. Now's the opportunity if you want to add handles, you want to add little pull tabs, anything you want to add, now is the time. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it in my free arm and I'm just going to stitch all the way along the bottom of my binding. And if I want to, I can come up and top stitch on the top of the binding. So it's easier to see on this one how close I could get to the top stitch and how neat it looks. But you saw how quick that doing that flat method of putting a bottom in works with the square. So all I'm going to do now is top stitch it, and I'm going to have a beautiful easy basket. So it's perfect for panels, it's perfect for embroidery, because the more you know, the more you sew.